Thursday, everybody, and welcome into the Porch. It is a Volquest baseball podcast. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Glad to have you guys with us here today. Tennessee set to begin SEC play for the second year in a row on the road. This time it's at Alabama, and we're going to get you set for the Vols and the Crimson Tide here over the next 30 to 40 minutes. Big thank you to our friends over at Spivey, King and Spivey LLP for being a proud sponsor of this show. If you got a problem, let them find a solution for you. That's T and Trial Lawyers. They specialize in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury. If you have a need, pick up the phone, dial this for a free consultation at 423-245-4185. Visit them online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. When you have a need, remember Spivey, King and Spivey LLP. All right, we got a whole bunch of stuff to get into today. VFL and home run champion Luc Lipcius. He will join the show in about 10 minutes, get his thoughts on Tennessee baseball from the week that we just had, get into his thoughts on Alabama and the series coming up, the differences in non-con and conference play. Luke even says it's pretty much a different season, so excited to get that underway. We'll get to Luke here in about 10, 12 minutes or so. A couple of notes before we get into Luke. The biggest question, the biggest storyline for Tennessee baseball right now is probably the availability of starting pitcher A.J. Russell. He was the Friday night starter, and he was marvelous, against Texas Tech on that Friday night on season opener. Came back, pitched against Albany, 3 scoreless innings left with general soreness, and that's the last we've seen him. He's missed his last 2 starts. I thought that he would get on the mound on Tuesday, was told that was kind of the plan, but instead they called a quick Omaha audible, and he did a bullpen on Tuesday. But Tony Vitello, when asked in postgame on Tuesday after Tennessee's win over Eastern Kentucky, said, hey, I don't know when it's going to be, but he'll be on the mound at some point this weekend. It's likely to be an inning or 2 out of the bullpen. But as some of you guys have asked, would not shock me if he hasn't pitched on Friday or Saturday yet. Wouldn't shock me if he opened Sunday's game because, again, there's still no clear-cut Sunday starter, if you will. Xander Sechrest has, started the first 2 Sundays, and he's been back to his midweek role. Aaron Combs started last weekend. Derek Schaefer, the true freshman, started 2 weeks ago, and there's not been a clear-cut, set-in-stone Sunday starter. And as we'll talk with Luke about it in a moment, whenever A.J. Russell is stretched out and when he is back, depending on what A.J. Causey does this weekend and maybe next weekend, do you even mess with anything? Should you leave Causey on Fridays, beam on Saturday, and maybe slide A.J. Russell in there on Sunday? You talk about that bullet in the chamber for Sunday. Goodness gracious, A.J. Russell, that'd be pretty solid to kind of know what you have as the weekend goes on. But I don't know. We'll see. A.J. Russell is going to continue to get stretched out. How long does that take? I don't know. We'll see. And how does A.J. Causey even pitch this weekend in SEC play? He has been fan-freaking-tastic in his 2 starts. Career-high 12 strikeouts against Illinois this past weekend, so he's looked really, really good. But Tennessee, again, like I said earlier in the week, I know it's a big talking point for us about who's going to be that 3rd starter and all that. The staff isn't worrying about it. So many, if you look around college baseball across the country, so many teams do Friday night starter, Saturday night starter, and TBD. We have just been blessed, and really we've just been spoiled for the past couple of years where you knew what you had on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the most part, and then you still had 2 or 3 guys in the bullpen that could come in and start. And I think Tennessee has that this year too, but the staff really isn't worried about 1, 2, 3 right now. The staff likes the options, likes the progression, and baseball's very much, let's tinker, let's see what works, let's let it play out, and all the answers don't have to be right here immediately. So, again, I ask the questions all the time. I'm wondering. I know you guys are as well, but it's not really a big, obviously, it's their job to try to figure it out and focus on it, but staff isn't losing sleep over not having a true Sunday starter as of now. Because, again, you had Nate Snead, and in my opinion, as I'll talk with Luke about in a moment, if you're going to pitch 6 innings out of the bullpen on Sunday, why are you not starting, in my opinion? Nate Snead certainly could be a starter as well. So A.J. Russell looks like he's about to make his return to the mound, and that is a great thing for Tennessee baseball. And the goal was always SEC play, and it looks like he's going to contribute in minor capacity, but contribute, and so that goal was attained. And so we'll see what that means for the rotation moving forward. But for this weekend, it's A.J. Causey, and then it's going to be Drew Beam, and then it's going to be TBD. So we'll see what happens. Another point I wanted to talk about before I get to Luke. Man, Hunter Insley's coming along the last 2 games, and that's good, man. I mean, guy you root for. I think he's become a fan favorite last year. Tennessee needed a right-handed bat in that lineup so bad, so they kept force-feeding Hunter Insley earlier in the year, and then, Tennessee was trying to figure out the outfield rotation, who could play, who couldn't. Jared Dickey was supposed to play a lot more center field than he did. Griffin Merritt was positioned to play a whole lot more in the corner outfield, and those 2 things really didn't work out. Dickey, found out that he was primarily a left fielder, and Griffin Merritt more as a DH. Hunter Insley found a home, and he was playing good defense, and he was one of Tennessee's best hitters in SEC play, and he's a guy you can really, really root for. And so when he's been struggling at the plate so far this season, it's really been kind of tough to watch because you hate to see that. But, just 2 games. We'll see what happens. He started that rally when Tennessee was down 3-0 in the 5th inning with a solo home run in the 5th. A pinch hit opportunity, took advantage of it, and then he homered again on Tuesday. Good to see him swinging the bat well. Because, again, he's going to continue to get the benefit of the doubt and get opportunities because we've seen him produce before. It's not like, can he produce? It's we've seen him produce. And so Vitello is going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's much easier to put him in lineup now, which he's got a little something cooking at the plate. And you love the defense that he plays behind him in center field. So will we ever see Kavor Steers in center field? Oh, absolutely. You'll see. I mean, Insley will go, he'll get a day off, and if he's not hitting well, then they'll continue to be a part-time player. But I do think it's a good thing heading into conference play on the road, bigger field. It's not everything, but I do think it's something to where you can have confidence to put Insley in the lineup so he can play center field, let Dreiling and Tears play your corners, and then, Robin as a DH and working, Bargo, at some point. So I think that is a really good thing. I'm not saying that Hunter Insley will be starting game 1, but he'll play some center field this weekend for sure. But it's good to see because I think Tennessee needs Hunter Insley, not to be great, but they need Hunter Insley to not be bad, in my opinion. I like this baseball team. Kind of did a a checkup, if you will, on last week's podcast, and I really like this team. I mean, Alabama and Tennessee kind of mirror each other in a lot of different ways. The lineups both are really good. I'll get to Alabama more in a moment, but Tennessee's lineup's really good, man. I mean, there are guys that could be starting and in the lineup as everyday players at other teams, across the SEC, and we know how good this SEC is with Robin and Bargo and, some of these other guys that are kind of, plug and play players, but not everyday players. I really like this lineup, and I like the depth and the quality and the at-bats that they're giving you, and the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, Tennessee's a doubles machine. Tennessee is hitting home runs. Tennessee's hitting for great averages. Guys that we're not even really talking about, like Dylan Dreiling, having great years. I like this team. I like the arms. As I wrote in the 3-2-1, we're going to see exactly what these bullpen roles are now that we're in SEC play. Kind of, who is this? Luke will talk about Kirby kind of being a bridge player here in a moment, but, what is Kirby's role? We've seen him being used more and more and more than we have in the last 2 years early on in the non-conference schedule. Aaron Combs, is he a stopper in the back end, or is he going to be a bridge, or is he going to be middle relief, or is he going to be an opener? We'll see. I think we know what we got in Chris Stamos. I think you know what you got in Sneed when he's in the bullpen for sure, and Causey when he's in the bullpen. Marcus Phillips has really got to get some consistency on the mound, and man, they're continuing to throw the crap out of Andrew Binky and Dylan Loy, and they've looked really good. Dylan Loy, I think, has been the freshman. I think I said in the Volquest mailbag earlier this week that he's been the freshman MVP. I mean, that would be Dean Curle, but you know what I meant, on the arms, on the mound, where you thought it'd be Schaefer or Dallas at this point in time, but it's really been Dylan Loy. He's been pitching pretty well. So I like the depth and the options of the pitchers, but they're gonna need to find their specific roles, and I think it truly starts this weekend at Alabama, and I'm excited to see what that is. But I like this team, I do, and I like the leadership. I think Christian Moore has grown just leaps and bounds since his freshman season in terms of being a good baseball player, a good defender, but also just a good teammate. And that's no slight at him for who he was earlier in his career. He's just, he's an example of a young guy, and I'm sure he would tell you this too. He's an example of a young guy that came in that was really good at baseball and was a kid. And then he sat there and he watched and he learned and he saw, what goes into being a leader in the clubhouse, in the locker room, on the field. And He's transformed before our eyes, and he's a great ambassador for this team right now, and so that's really, really cool to see. Blake Burke and Charlie Taylor, Cal Stark, some of these guys who are Insley, who are leaders on this team. I think that you're going to benefit greatly from that if you're this team. Whereas in years past, I don't think you had that leadership, or at least last year, you didn't have that leadership at least early on. And so I think that's good to see. So I like this team. I like the options. I'm ready to see what they can do in competitive baseball series throughout the rest of the season. No more 24-1 on a Saturday. No more batting around 3 times in a baseball game on a weekend. It's just, I ain't got no time for that. All right, so I'm excited to see Southeastern Conference play in that regard. And then finally, I'll tell you a little bit about Alabama before we hand things over to Luc Lipcius. Alabama's good, man. Number 14 in the country. They are 15-2. Rob Vaughn, first season as head coach. And again, you're entering a new phase of the season, so we'll see how good Alabama and Tennessee is in that regard. But, for everything that happened last year with the controversy and the gambling scandal and all that, I know that happened kind of mid-season, so it wasn't brand new, but for everything to kind of come together and start off so well for Rob Vaughn, it's been really impressive. It's and the more and more I dug into Alabama this week, the more and more I've been impressed. They were picked to finish 4th in the SEC West this season. Only one preseason selection, that was lefty in the pen, closer Alton Davis II. He's really good. Their weekend rotation is going to be Ben Hess, who is a veteran, a really good player. I'll get him in a moment. Greg Ferrone, who I believe transferred in. I'll see that in a moment. But Greg Ferrone, who is a lefty, will start game 2. And then, they said they're going to start Hagen Banks in game 3, and he started last weekend, but only pitched 1 inning in a bullpen game. I don't know if they're trying to transition him into a true starting role or what, but Hagen Banks is going to start game 3 according to the Alabama game notes and what they gave Tennessee's SID. But other guys like Aiden Moza has started 3 games this season. Zane Adams is the midweek starter. His numbers look really good. They got a couple of other options who could start that 3rd game, but they say it's going to be Hagen Banks. I'll tell you a little bit about Ben Hess. Well, he's a righty, big old, burly guy, 6'5", about 230. Last year as a junior was pretty solid before having to shut things down due to elbow soreness. Sits 93 to 95 with the fastball. He mixes in a slider at 87, a curveball at 77 that locates pretty well, a changeup at 87. So he's pretty solid, and his numbers kind of reflect that. He's got a 3-0 record and a 2.65 ERA on the season. Yes, Greg Ferrone from Louisville. He did transfer from Louisville. Really good start to the season with his new ball club. 2-0, 1.72 ERA. In 2022 with the Cardinals, or 2023, need to change that. I'm reading off my preview here. In 2023, see, because this year's 2024, he really struggled with the Cardinals. 1-5, 5.33 ERA. Not really good, but he started 2 games this season over 3 appearances, and he's been pretty solid. Aiden Moza, who I mentioned a moment ago, 2-0, 6.39 ERA, has started 3 games, but that ERA is a little high. Zane Adams, the midweek starter, started the 2nd game of the season, but has been regulated to the midweeks ever since. 1-1 record, of 3.86 ERA. Right-handed reliever Austin Morris, 1-0, 2.57 ERA. He's been pretty solid out of the bullpen over 5 appearances. Hagen Banks, who's going to be the Game 3 starter, again, has made 2 appearances on the season, 1 spot start, and that came against Lipscomb on Sunday, where he pitched 1 scoreless inning with 1 strikeout. And then the big gun, closer Alton Davis, the southpaw, 1-0, 2.16 ERA. He's already got 3 saves on the season and 8 1/3 innings pitched so far. Team ERA for Alabama, it's really good, 3.56. Opponents are hitting 2.22 off Alabama pitching. So pretty well-rounded. Not bad. And then as equally as impressive as the arms for the Crimson Tide are the bats. Team average of 343 of the 9, very much like Tennessee, because if you look at Tennessee's stats, let me pull these up here. If you look at Tennessee's stats, 8 of the 9 quote-unquote everyday starters are hitting over 300 on the season. Hunter Insley, and boy, that average has shot up the last couple of games, is hitting at 271, which is not a horrible average at all, but it's 271. And then again, not to mention, guys, Bargo's hitting 364, who's not in this conversation. They actually moved Robin up because he qualifies with as many at bats now, so that's good to see. But Robin's in the other category that is not even in this conversation, but he's hitting 364. Ethan Payne, all the dude does is hit. Of course, he's only had 10 ABs on the season, but I'm not talking about him. Reese Chapman, who has 18 at bats on the year, 278, and he's played better at the plate here of late. So anyway, everyday starters, 8 of 9 are hitting over 300. Same can be said for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Will Hodo, I guess that's how you say his name. I don't know. He's in 259. Everybody else is hitting over 300. You got one guy, Gage Miller, the third baseman, junior college transfer, is hitting 478 on the season. He's really good. 478, 32 hits, 30 runs scored, 8 home runs, 24 RBI, 910 slugging percentage, 548 on base percentage, leading the team in all those categories. Junior college transfer, third baseman Gage Miller, so watch out for him. Bryce Eblin's really good player, veteran player, 397 hitter at the plate so far, 4 home runs, 15 ribbies, 4 stolen bases. We know that name, of course. Senior catcher Mac, I don't even know how to say his last name, Gassetti. We'll go with that. That sounded right. He's hitting 378 in 14 games. I'm editing in real time right here. 378 in 14 games with 12 starts. Ole Miss transfer outfielder TJ McCants. We know that name. Off and running, no pun intended, 6 stolen bases on the season for McCants. 361 average at the plate, 6 home runs. That's second high on the team and 23 RBI. He's off to a really solid start with his new team. Rutgers transfer outfielder Evan Slight is hitting 344. True freshman shortstop Justin LeBron hitting 333. First baseman Mason Sweeney is hitting 333. Outfielder Ian Petrutz is hitting 313. Again, it's a deep order. It is a deep lineup for Alabama, and something to be on the lookout for over the weekend. Stolen bases. Alabama 15 for 15 on the season in stolen bases. They've been really efficient, been picking and choosing when to go, but they've been good. And so I think that's something that Tennessee's got to be on the lookout for this weekend for sure. So that is a look at the Alabama Crimson Tide. I like where Tennessee is. I like who Tennessee is, and I'm excited to see how Tennessee performs. Luc Lipcius is going to chime in on a bunch of this stuff here coming up next. But first, before we get to Luke, I want to tell you about our proud sponsor of the show. Couldn't do the Porch podcast without our friends, big Tennessee fans as well. That's Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP. 3 partners, Matthew A. Spivey, J. Matt King, Richard A. Spivey. If you got a problem, they're going to find a solution for you, T and Trial Lawyers. They specialize in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury, examples of which can be DUI, homicide, assault, car wrecks, accidents, and injuries. 80 years of combined experience. Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP provides representation throughout state and federal courts in Northeast Tennessee. The firm has a vast amount of trial experience. The practice has been in place for 43 years, with this specific partnership since 2012, also having partners who are energized for today's modern legal demands, practicing primarily in Northeast Tennessee, the Tri-Cities of Sullivan County, as well as Hawkins County, Washington County, and surrounding counties. The firm has won multiple awards and have attorneys who are rated by super lawyers in Mid-South with real trial experience. Whether you're injured in a car accident, need a divorce, help with custody of your children, or have been accused of a crime, Spivey, King, and Spivey LLP is here to help you. 142 Cherokee Street in Kingsport, Tennessee. To go see him in person, you can call him for a free consultation today at 423-245-4185 or visit online at SpiveyKingandSpiveyLLP.com. Spivey, King, and Spivey, LLP.com. You got a problem, they're going to find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers. Luke, it is finally time to jump into SEC play, and I asked you this last week. I'm going to ask again, kind of as you look to a new phase of the season, if you will. What do you like about this team? What does this team do well, and why do you think this team is going to do well in Southeastern Conference play?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you called it a new phase of the season. I was about to say this is the start of a new season, because that SEC play is a gauntlet, and that's what's being stressed right now. That was stressed to us is just the back to back nature of just power teams, and not only power teams but power pitching. Because up until this point, I'd say Illinois' staff, as far as stuff goes, is the best we've seen. But just imagine, guys running out 2 to 4 every single day as starters, then you get the bullpen at 6 to 8, it's just dude after dude after dude. But I think this is a Tennessee team that is built to withstand these good teams. Their lineup is one that is not just a midweek killer, but they take great at bats against good pitching, and they still hit against good pitching. I think we saw that this weekend. These, like I said, as far as stuff wise, this past weekend, we had kids running up to 6. They just weren't the most polished stuff. The stuff was there, just weren't the most polished pitchers. But even so, we took advantage of mistakes. We gave it to them. We didn't back down. Like on Sunday, we were down 3 all the way into the 5th. It's just a lot of good stuff that I've seen out of the guys this season. A lot of grinder ABs and a subtle confidence that you need to do well in the SEC.
You and I were talking before we hit play here and just kind of looking at Alabama stats. I know you haven't watched many of their games, but it's a team that, man, 343 team average and a 356 team ERA. I mean, it's a really well-rounded ball club. And again, everybody's starting SEC play. I understand that, but really well-rounded ball club on paper. They got some dudes that can hit and dudes that can throw.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funky because you see a team that went through what they did last year in their whole coaching debacle, and they come back this year even better. You don't see that too often. But what they're doing is great. I know that there's going to be guys on that team that remember what happened last year and how fun it was to start winning towards the end, that want to keep on doing it. And they know just as well as we do that it's SEC time. There's a little bit of a rivalry there just because now that they've gotten better at baseball and they're almost on the same path that Tennessee is, just kind of 2 years behind, so to speak. Going into Tuscaloosa, they got a great ballpark there. That place, it does not fly very well, so we'll see how our team does dealing with that. But I'm perfectly fine with our team. I know they can hit a bunch of doubles, but this is a truly good, a truly SEC caliber Alabama team. It's going to be big versus big, and I'm just really excited to see what we can do against them and then what they can do against us.
Let's talk about Game 3 against Illinois. Blake Burke gets ejected, had to miss the midweek game earlier this week against. I forgot who they played. All the games are running together now, but nonetheless, it was Eastern Kentucky. There you go. That was going to bug me. But it was a situation where both teams got warned earlier in the game. They were chirping a little bit, and Burke hits that home run, comes across home plate, says something to the catcher, and then he's run. I don't know. What did you think about that whole situation? And what Tony spoke on after the game, kind of what led to the chirping. I mean, they were quick pitch in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And as a guy that has probably been quick pitch before, what's your experience in that and how dangerous is that?
So I wrote down in my notes, I said the umps need to stop letting them quick pitch. I have major feelings about that. For one, like you mentioned, it is dangerous. But then for two, I think a pitcher that quick pitches in the sense of not so much messing with your timing, but literally being ready to pitch before the batter is ready is kind of like a wuss move. Like you are literally saying, hey, my stuff's not good enough to beat you, so I'm going to try and quick pitch you when you're not even looking at me. So that's the way I feel about it. So I've always thought that people who do stuff like that, there's just no respect towards them or even towards the batter, which is the thing that I like the least about it. And then the umpires that let it happen, like, I'm just not a fan of it. It's easy to bring up the one instance last year, when Simo was yelling for time, the ump's not giving it to him. But like with the game speeding up as much as it has, you have to give the hitters time to reset and do their thing, or else it becomes a completely pitcher-owned game. So that's another reason why I just don't like the whole quick pitch. We saw it calm down a little bit, but it gets your blood boiling when someone just keeps on doing it. And, you could see Cal and the other catcher were even probably exchanging something about that very same topic earlier in the game. And then, Burke hits the homer, he says something to the umpire. I think if there hadn't been warnings earlier in the game, he wouldn't have gotten tossed, but, it's bad timing. Makes him sit out of game. His blood should be boiling going into the weekend even more because of it. So all in all, good game. But as far as actual gameplay goes, I thought Sunday was a great game, and I'd hate to see quick pitching because like you almost put an asterisk on the at bat because it's not like a real at bat, you know.
Well, educate me here, okay? It was the very first at bat of the game in the bottom of the first inning, I guess. Simo was sitting in there. He was in the box.
Mm-hmm.
He's bat tapping all that. I about to say the dirt, it's turf, doing his little thing, but he's in the box. So should you stand with one? I mean, I know in Major League Baseball they're making you keep one leg in, one leg out. You can't be all the way out trying to speed up the game. But I mean, if Simo or whoever, I think it happened to Dean Curle, it's Cal. If you're in the box, I mean, as a pitcher, you're legally allowed to go ahead and throw, right? But you're still saying it's still weak. Just sportsmanship, right? I mean, be looking for it.
So it's like I think they were mentioning in the broadcast how I don't know what the actual rule is. I think technically when your feet are in the box, you can throw.
Yeah.
But as far as sportsmanship and respect goes, you got to wait until that head turns up and looks at the pitcher, right? Like that's on the batter at that point if they're taking so long that like they're not ready when their heads turn. But these guys, they were basically ready to go before the heads turn, in which, for granted, Cal takes, 13 seconds during his little pre-swing routine. But, a guy like Simo, he's getting in there and he's getting ready. And so if he is being sped up too much, then, it's a real problem. But, yeah, as far as the actual rule goes, I think technically there was no foul by Illinois. But as far as, like, gamesmanship goes, you got to wait till they're looking at the pitcher. One
of those unwritten rules, many in the sport for sure.
Exactly.
And let's lay off Cal. All right, he had a grand slam the other night.
Yeah, it's great. Two homers in the past 4 games, pretty good.
Yeah, he's seeing the ball well at the plate, and that's good to see from Cal. And you're right about Burke. Like if the warnings were an issue before then, I mean, I equate it to unsportsmanlike conduct and football. Mm-hmm. You get one of those, the next one you get, you're gone.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's kind of what I equate it to. How good is it to see Hunter Insley kind of rounding into form? 2 games, and I mean, because he's not been hitting consistently, he's playing really good defense. But because he's not been hitting consistently, he's kind of been a part-time player. They'll run that lineup out there with Tiers in center field, which is good to see. But he's in there, every other game. Sparks the comeback on Sunday because of the bonehead play from Reese Chapman. Lazily allows a run to score, and then the next time he comes up, he's pinch hit for Hunter Insley, hits a home run, solo home run, homers again on Tuesday. That's what you want to see from a veteran guy before you start SEC play because, again, you want him out there. He's got a good glove, and he was one of your better hitters last year in SEC play.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's almost this thing where you're just waiting for him to fall into his true self. And sometimes that's what it takes is a funky situation where you're not expecting to get in. And, when a younger guy, Reese Chapman, makes a mistake, which never should be made, and Hunter capitalizes, and we see that he hits a homer, comes back, has a great game on the midweek, hits another homer, and now I think you'll see that kind of tumble into the confidence that he needs and see him fall into his true form where, he's hitting homers here and there, but he's just hitting better than he has been. Because like you said, we know he can play defense, but that bat has had yet to show until that Sunday game. Even better that it did start to bolster the comeback. That was the first run we scored, I believe, and then from there we end up winning 8-5, whatever. Of course, Robin does what he does, but yeah, it was just great to see Hunter actually coming through, and I think we'll see it really snowball into a lot better ABs and a lot more hits, hopefully.
Look at Dean Curle last week. He's the SEC freshman of the week, and we talked about his historic game against Kansas State on last week's Porch, but. Baseball's humbling. He had kind of a rough week after that. He went over the next day. He got a couple hits. I think he drove in a couple of runs over the weekend against Illinois, but he made 3 errors altogether last week. And I wrote this in my column on Monday, like, hey, let's not forget. I mean, Dean Curley's still a freshman. Like, he's 19 years old. He's going to make some mistakes, all right? He's going to make some errors. That's a part of the game. You just can't have them stack on top of one another, kind of like what they were last week. He loves that backhand. It's almost like he wants to backhand everything at short. And I'm not even going to try to act like I'm Ron Washington. I play baseball, but I've never coached it or anything. But it feels like he's most comfortable backhanding stuff, and it's almost like when he gets in front of it, that's when he kind of loses balance, if you will, or kind of things kind of unravel for him defensively.
Yeah, so people definitely have their preferred side. Dean, he's really, really solid, really, really good already. What's going to be different, especially going into this weekend, is you don't have the comfiness of turf. So with that backhand, you can kind of let the ball come to you just because it's going to take true hops for the most part. And also you don't have to rush it as much because it is turf, so it's going to skip some more. When you get on the dirt, you got to make sure that you're moving your feet. You're not falling into this routine. And that was one thing that our infield coach always stressed to us is you can't have Midwest feet, so to speak, slow feet, which is what we see when he is making those errors. He's letting the ball play in. And yes, he is a freshman, but like you said, he's got to get off this train of errors and go into the weekend. And I think he'll field one, he'll field a second. He'll get comfortable on that dirt, and from there he'll just be the Dean that he is.
Look at the pitching going in this weekend, and obviously every time you talk pitching, it's with the huge caveat like, hey, AJ Russell's out or he's injured or whatever. He's going to pitch at some point this weekend, probably an inning or two at max out of the bullpen. If he's not used on Friday or Saturday, I very well could see him opening Sunday. But fact of the matter is it's going to be Causey again on Friday, Beam, and then TBD, which I think is fine. But Beam is going to be coming back, and not Beam. Russell's going to be coming back, and they'll get him stretched out, and then eventually he'll get back into the starting rotation. What would you do with Snead or Causey? In terms of that number 3 starter, if you will. You and I were talking on Sunday, and it's like, man, if they're going to throw Snead 6 innings, start him. Start him. Like, I understand wanting to have that high velo guy coming out of the pen, like Burns, that can give you extended amount of time like last year. I get all that, but if you're going to pitch 6 innings, start him. What do you think about all that?
So it's so hard to say just because of how similar the 3 righties are, and this is excluding Causey, right? You got 3 basically power arms that are going to spin you a fastball and then have faster, good off speed. So it's how do you want to pair them? Do you want to go Russell Friday with Snead to follow? But if you do that, then you're basically not even switching up any looks for the hitters. You could go Russell Causey. Then, of course, you don't have Causey on Sunday. It depends on how V and A want to see the staff. I think going forward, they will want to do Russell and leave Causey in the pen, move Snead back to the Sunday spot, just because Causey is such a dangerous person to have in your pen. The fact that he can go 6 innings means that on a Friday night, which is a must-win game, they're all must-wins, but Friday night, you really want to get that win. Let's say Russell or whoever doesn't go as long as they need to, Causey could literally finish out the game, safe pitching for the rest of the weekend. I think that's the most valuable way to use him, and then come up with Snead at the end. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. I wrote that in my notes, what does happen when Russell comes back. But for now, Causey had another extremely good performance. I think 12 Ks on Friday night, so he's doing just fine in that starter role. But yeah, we'll see what V wants to do with the guys. I mean, ideally you have one of the lefties step up. Matthew Dallas looked pretty good. So we'll see what happens. It's funky right now when you got 4 guys that are doing so well, but they also all basically are the same pitcher minus Causey.
I was well, I mean, while I'm talking about Causey, like, I recognize, Alabama and SEC play is going to be much different, but like, no matter what, like, I'm not touching Causey when he's got this thing rolling, because the last two weeks he's looked incredible. Now, if he does that against Alabama, don't touch it. Like don't fix what's not broken. But I agree with you. Eventually, as I've said all season long, you're at your best when both Snead and Causey are coming out of the pen, just because they're so different and all that. But we'll see what happens. Matthew Dallas, he got back in, and he had a huge strikeout on Tuesday. He didn't play at all in 5 games last week because the last 2 outings he just couldn't find the zone. And so he came in and he faced one batter, started the count off 2-0, battled back and struck him out. I thought that was big for Matthew Dallas. Derek Schaefer, we'll see kind of what they do and how they use him, but you need those 2 freshmen, as you mentioned, to come along just to give you some more options. Because I'm fine with going, starter Friday, starter Saturday, TBD on Sunday, because that's what a lot of teams do anyway. And if you get these guys humming, you fix Marcus Phillips as well, you're still going to have ample options come Sunday, just like Tennessee always has under Vitello.
Yeah, and that's why it is a good problem to have. Just we got everyone, it seems like, can go long distance too. The one caveat I will say is Kirby, not the best week out of the pen. I think on the midweek he did pretty good, but then coming in on the weekend gave up a couple runs, didn't really look his true self.
Let
But
me ask
again,
you this. Sorry to cut you off. Do you think Vitello or Anderson was kind of testing him to see, how much can I get how much of that arm can I get in a weekend? Can I throw you 2 innings on Friday, 2 innings on Sunday if I need you? Because I felt like that's kind of what they were. Because, I mean, again, he threw 40 pitches, 3 innings on the midweek, which was awesome for him. But
mhm.
then they trotted him back out there on Friday, I believe. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, okay, they must be testing him.
So I think they were testing him two ways. Well, I'll preface with this: it is extremely common for a Tony V and Coach Anderson coach staff to have that bridge guy come in on both Friday and Sunday, bridge slash closer. You saw it a lot with Hundley, you saw it a
Yep.
lot with Redmond, and then now we're most likely going to see it with Kirby. It's just a guy that you could throw in at basically any point. Let's say you get in a jam on Friday, perfect. Get in a jam on Sunday, great. Of course, you're going to leave that Saturday, but to itself. But not only did he come in, he came in a kind of a gutsy situation. We were up by, I think it was 4 or 5 at that point,
Mm-hmm.
but still runners on, see what he can do, and also on short rest, like he would need to do, let's say on a Sunday after a Friday. So I think that was exactly the play by the coaches, is to see how he can do in these situations that we're going to need him in down the road.
I wrote about this on Monday as well, and kind of going into SEC play. I'm sitting here kind of looking and examining this team. This top of the order, man. I mean, it's really good. Simo leading off, Burke, the way he's swinging the bat right now in the 2 hole, Amick in the 3, and then Tiers, who's had a 16-game hitting streak right now. And then Cannon Peoples swinging the bat a little bit better, and all that. 5 and so on and so forth. Robin hitting a grand slam. But like 1 through 5, man. I mean, how dangerous is that 1 through 5 that Tennessee has right now? Because it feels like you could stack those guys up against really anybody right now.
There's just so much confidence, and plus, what's great is each of those hitters is going to be made better by the person behind them,
Yeah.
because they have so much cover. It's like I know that the opposing pitchers are just holding their breath because it's just dude after dude after dude, and it doesn't even stop with KT. It keeps on going. But that top four, I've said it before, but that, like, each and every one of them is capable of 15 plus homers. And not only that, but also hitting for average, like a 330 with 15, which is just so scary to think about. But yeah, there's some dudes at the top, and they're going to score a lot of runs at the top. And what's also great is sometimes you see teams that have that power core, and when they don't get it done, the whole team is kind of down. But what's great about this Tennessee lineup is even after that power core, we got guys that will continue to get it done, even if let's say they have an off day. So we have more spark plugs that can get the offense going when they're down.
Tennessee and Alabama kicking off SEC play. Let's hope that Tennessee doesn't start conference play like it did last year, but it ended really well. And that's what Christian Moore was telling us the other night. It's like, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I couldn't agree more. But anything else about this team that you've liked, that you've seen so far, kind of heading into, again, this new phase of the season?
Well, I will say one thing from this past weekend, we actually got to see a true Vol weather series. It was raining on Friday, it was raining on Saturday. Well, actually, I made 2 notes about that. The most important one is they need to hurry up on that awning that they're planning on building at Lindsey Nelson, so that way people have a place to stand.
Yeah.
But then for 2, we used to love playing in those weather games, and I think there is really a tell of how a team is. And the fact that we're putting up 24, I mean, take it for granted, or for whatever. Illinois is walking against a bunch of people,
Yeah.
but we did not back down. It seemed like we enjoyed playing. That's a sign of a good team. And the team this year is just giving such like a subtle confidence, almost like we had with that 2021 team, where like we knew that we still had to grind, but we also knew that we were good, which is so fun to see out of such a talented Tennessee baseball team. So I'm looking for those guys to just put it on Bama, not back down, and really come out swinging the way we have been for the past few weeks.
Dude, it at one point in time on Saturday, it was sunshiny. Like I had sunglasses on, and it was sideways raining. I mean,
Yeah.
East Tennessee weather, like
Yeah, to a T.
it's ridiculous. All right, Luke, appreciate it, man, and we'll see what Tennessee does this weekend. We'll recap it all on the porch next week. All right.
Of course, looking forward to it.
Great stuff as always from VFL Home Run King for now, Luc Lipcius, right here on the porch every single week before the weekend series at Volquest.com. Big thank you to you guys for tuning in and watching this show as always, and a big thank you to our friends over at Spivey, King and Spivey LLP. Matthew A. Spivey, J. Matt King, Richard A. Spivey, a great trio. If you got a problem, they're going to find a solution for you. TN Trial Lawyers specializing in criminal defense, family law, and personal injury. Give them a call today if you have the need for a free consultation. That is at 423-245-4185, or visit them online at Spivey, King and Spivey LLP.com. For Luc Lipcius, co-host of The Porch, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for being here. We'll have coverage for you all weekend long. Tennessee against Alabama. All that and more on the General's Quarters at Volquest.com.